Hello, friends and family out there in Facebook land, LinkedIn land, and YouTube land. Welcome to Sunday at noon here in Mountain Time, 2 o'clock out east. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder of the Parent Tween Connection. And this month we're hosting a roundtable. We're bringing in all kinds of professionals to talk about all kinds of topics. And I'm super excited to have Beth Jones with us. Beth lives here in the Colorado area with me. She is the founder of Beth Jones Coaching and The Nourished Athlete. And when I tell you that this woman is an overabundantly wealthy wealth of knowledge, my words are hard this morning, apparently. She's a huge wealth of knowledge about supporting teen girls' health and most specifically supporting athletes in that same demographic as well. Beth, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I may be right up there with the words today with you. It's a Sunday thing, I think.
Hey, it's all good. But what I love is that, as entrepreneurs, we have the flexibility to be like, yeah, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to do something on a day when I might be able to connect with more families. Exactly. Or, you had flexibility, so you were able to reschedule when I asked you to do it.
Right. And it works out well for me. Sundays are football days in our house, which I don't necessarily watch, but my husband does. So it's a great time for me to get my stuff done too and catch up on stuff like this when it comes up for me.
Absolutely.
So, agreed.
And by the way, for anybody who is watching, if you would like to join the conversation, all you got to do is pop over to our Facebook group. I just popped a link to the Facebook group out there. Looks like it's gone to YouTube. Oh, hey, Renata is joining us as well from LinkedIn. So Beth, give us a short synopsis of your background and why it is that mental health and wellness and nutrition and all the things go together for you.
Right. Okay. Well, short synopsis is going to be the key here. I'll do my best. So really, first of all, I'll just say I've been a lifelong athlete myself. I started gymnastics at the age of about 4, competed till I was 12, moved into a variety of different high school sports, was a rower in college, and continued to be active in sports as an adult. So athletes, first of all, were kind of my blood. And that eventually led me to a career as a certified athletic trainer. And I always want to just point out that it's not the personal trainer at the gym. It's more of the sports medicine side.
Absolutely.
If you watch football, when the people go down and the really cool people with the fanny packs come running on the field, yeah, that's me.
And I think that's particularly relevant because anybody who doesn't live under a rock or knows somebody who watches football heard about DeMar Hamlin, 24 years old, dropped from cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
People who legit saved his life, not just the athletic trainers, but also the emergency support behind them. But they're the first ones on the field.
They are. And, I did a lot of sharing about that only because that was it was such a tragic event, even though the outcome was so wonderful for that to happen. Wonderful example of what athletic trainers and other people in that sports medicine team train for. That situation was something we were told would never, you need to know about this. You'll never experience it. But we literally, I worked, and this will go back into about me. I've been an athletic trainer for 20 years and gosh, most of that time I've been working at the high school level. And even at the high school level, we had one of those plans for every sport, every field. So every year I would review that type of emergency thing with all of my coaches, all of my students, all of that. So anyway, but yeah, that is the adrenaline, huge boost of athletic training. But really what I enjoyed as the athletic trainer being one was the connection that I made with these student athletes because they would come in. I should also mention, in addition to being an athletic trainer, I was also a teacher. And so I was in the classroom and I was also after school with these kids in the athletic training room. So I got to be with them in different situations and really get to see different sides of these teens.
Sure.
And I did this all before I had my own kids. And so I like to say I'm better prepared to work with teens than I was even with my little kids, but now my kids are moving into the teen years. So we'll see how that goes in theory, in reality. But so really what happened is starting with my time in the athletic training room, I really started seeing these needs outside of just, you sprained your ankle, let's get you taped, let's get you on a rehab program and get you out back on the field. which is a lot of what, we hear: play, play, play. They need to be playing. They have to have field time. But then what I was seeing in the athletic training room, having these conversations with kids was, the mental struggles of what else was going on in their life, the fear of going back on the field, the fact that maybe they fell out of love with the sport, but they were just still doing it because they felt the pressure to do so.
Absolutely.
And then on the nutrition side of things, having these athletes come in drinking energy drinks right before a game, not eating. I can't tell you how many times I had kids that came into the athletic training room who were having episodes on the field because they hadn't eaten in 5 hours and went to go try to do a really big workout.
Absolutely.
Started exploring also the functional side of wellness and nutrition, and how does that play into the healing when we get these kids who are injured and struggling, and getting full body healing to get them back on the field and staying there. And so, so after I did a lot of additional studies outside of what we would consider the traditional sports medicine realm of things. As an educator, I've done a lot of mindfulness and SEL training. I'm certified in that. But that was the other point of it, is I started seeing a lot of these similar things in my non-athletic students.
Right.
And so I taught a lot of different subjects, but my main one was health and PE, but I also taught English and science, and I was in the special ed department for a while as well. And we started one year, finally started a yoga program, and the number of kids who could get out of the traditional PE because they were self-conscious, and we can talk a little bit about that, and into a more kind of restorative program, and me being me, bringing in some other little wellness tidbits.
Absolutely.
It was amazing just to see these kids who were not normally active kids suddenly blossoming, because we were talking about moving your body, and we were allowing them a break, and we were having open conversations about what was going on in their lives. And we were talking about, hey, have you thought about choosing this as a food instead of this? And another piece of that is, for the past 5 years until this past year, I taught online for a school. And I taught middle through high schoolers health and PE, and did a weekly live health PE session to kids all across the country that would come in. And it was great. We had a whole lot of fun. We did, some of it was health lessons, some of it was PE. But I was really lucky because I had a lot of autonomy in what I could create in those lessons. And, like my lesson on label reading was one of the biggest, hits that I would bring back, every semester, because the kids were like, what? And, we do kind of like a scavenger hunt, and have them start looking up the common foods that they would buy. And we would have conversations, not just of, hey, eat this, not that, but more of, hey, now you're informed. You can look at what you're eating and decide if you want to eat that. So
I see that even like in a test prep world. Like, I always guide my students, like, make sure that you get up and move, make sure that you have a healthy breakfast. They're like, I don't like breakfast. I'm like, your brain needs carbohydrates, but that's a whole other conversation.
And that was the other thing. It's like, you haven't eaten in so long, and I get it. I'm one of those people, and I'm still, it's noon, I still have my coffee. It's my vice. And I'm not a big person who loves to eat in the morning. I don't have that drive always, but like I have, for example, I'm working with a teen athlete right now, and she struggles with that too. And it's like, okay, 30 minutes within getting up in the morning, what could you eat? Can you have a handful of nuts and a piece of fruit? That is enough maybe to get you over to, like, this student who's like, well, my first period teacher lets us have a snack. I'm like, fantastic. Have a little something right before you head out the door, just to kind of ramp you up and get you moving. And then bring a bigger snack to eat during class. And that's great.
How does that tie in then, right? Like, you've seen the kids in the athletic room, in the training room, you've seen them on the field, you've seen them in the classroom, you've seen them in, settings where you didn't necessarily have them as athletes.
Right.
So mental wellness. How do you do that? Like, all of these things, like you were talking about, like, okay, let's get you that first period snack.
Right.
Physiological benefit, there's also a mental health benefit.
There is, for sure. And I think one of the things that we need to kind of be aware of as more of the adults who are supporting these kids is, especially, well, teens in general, but the amount of anxiety and depression that is just skyrocketing right now
Mhm.
with our
Mhm.
kids. And, we're trying to, we need to get them back in schools. We need to do, get them off the screens and everything. All of that is absolutely right. But, we need to also be looking at, why are we struggling so much?
Mhm.
And I know that, as, supporting kids on the academic side, just the amount of things these kids are juggling. And so we're waking up, these, a lot of times our teens are waking up already dreading what's ahead of them in front of their day.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
already struggle getting them up in the morning, and then they're just like, oh, I just don't want to do this. So a couple of things. When we can get both a little bit of carb and a little bit of protein in them within that 30 minutes of the day, as you mentioned, your brain feeds on carbs. That is that quick sugar that's going to get your brain like, okay, we're activated, metabolism's going to start firing up. We're going to be getting that blood flow to the brain.
Mhm.
And that is going to be that kickstart just to kind of get them moving. And then the protein is also going to help, with the muscles, and the brain
Mhm.
uses it a little bit, but it's just also a nice, what I call a buffer. So, if you have a kid who decides they're just going to down orange juice and be gone, instead of having the huge sugar high, with the insulin rush and everything like that, we have a
Mhm.
little buffer of that protein in there to kind of drip that energy a
Right.
little bit.
I
And
always say to my kids, it's like the carbs are like simple carbs are the short-term energy. The protein is what's going to actually fuel the rest of your body for a longer period.
exactly. And that's exactly what it is. Because when you have both of those, and even that's why I always say, even if you can get a little fat in there too, it's like
Mhm.
your body can't break down those carbs quite as fast. And so that's when you get that grip, that little drip of energy, and you're not going to have that crash in the middle of first period or
Right.
second period or whatever. And then the moving part of it, there's a great book called Spark. And I don't know do you have it? I have the e-copy. Yes, that book. So you've read it. Absolutely love this book, but the research in there, and I've used it in my classroom, is when we get these kids moving in a high way, and we can't always do this as teens, but at least we can get them moving in some way. But even if you're like, quick, go to do 10 jumping jacks or something like that, but bring up this movement that actually is going to release some more of that dopamine and serotonin in the brain, which are our happy hormones. And that is going to just better set a stage for, focus and, positive mindset as they're moving into their day, instead of this kind of, I'm hungry, I'm underfueled, or I'm having a sugar crash because all I had was a donut or a muffin,
Yep.
which is better than nothing. Let me just put that out there. But, that's also going to get, the neurotransmitters that we need for learning,
Right.
in there, and that we need, that goes into mental wellness. When we have our happy hormones flowing, when we're moving a little bit, then, we're going to do better and approach things in a more positive manner.
Absolutely. Well, and I've even noticed that depending on the consumption of like if I don't have enough protein in my day, I'm constantly snacking. I'm constantly distracted. I can't focus.
Yeah.
And then as somebody who is self-diagnosed with ADHD, I'm sitting here going like beating myself up for why can't I stick to a healthy eating plan? Why can't I focus? Like how do all these other entrepreneurs get it all done? And as I think back, these are the same thoughts that I had when I was a kid. And what I think now is I kept myself super busy as a way to hide that fact.
Yeah. No.
I wanted to take a second though. I want to go back for any of our
Yeah.
listeners. This book, Spark, if you're seeing the video by Dr. John Ratey, Ratey, is fantastic. And not only does he get into research about food or not so much food, but movement really on neurotypical brains. He goes into a lot of studies about exercise and the impact on neurodivergent brains. And neurodivergent could be ADD, ADHD. It could be like seniors who are navigating cognitive decline. It's just fascinating. He talks about depression and anxiety and all that. And we don't need to necessarily get off the track, but I know, Beth, you and I, this is definitely one of the ones. I mean, I literally turned around and it was right there.
Yeah. Well, we
So
could definitely have a whole nother conversation on the neurodivergent brain and some of this, because like you, I have ADHD, and my other side thing, working with a lot of neurodivergent students, and that thing, what you're saying, having that protein. And I always laugh too. It's like the things that support the neurodivergent brain also support the neurotypical brain.
correct.
You
And
know,
I think it's really important that we don't even realize with a lot of our kids, like I remember my mom saying to me, I don't care what your grades are as long as you try your best, but don't forget that I know what your best is.
right.
And so that, while I know it was meant to be motivating, that was pressure that I felt that, like, if I didn't get the grades that matched what she thought was my best, so I always had to like outperform, right? And so the
Right.
setting them up physiologically with the food intake
Yeah.
not only impacts their ability to process intellectually, but then it's all the other things that come in emotionally as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you think of, yeah, I mean, there's so much emotional drama in our teen state. And we have to remember that, what they're processing as being, high panic zone type things, we may not see that as adult because we've dealt with these things before. We have coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a teen who had a spat with their partner or their best friend before school, and that can offline them for the entire day.
All
And
day.
especially if they're hungry, especially, if they didn't sleep well, all of these other things that are muddling up, that emotional processing center anyway. And then that's what they're focused on instead of being focused on either work, or even later in the day, if they are athletes or musicians and things like that, they're training and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so
Really.
by helping to set them up through making sure I always say to my parents, it's like, you're not going to be able to, even if you pack your kid a lunch, you're not going to be able to make sure that they eat that lunch. And if they're going out to eat, or if they're buying school lunch, you're not going to be there to make sure that they have their nice balanced plate. And when I always say that, I don't look at calories and macros and anything. We are looking specifically at just a nice balanced plate has a lot of colorful vegetables, as many as we can get our kids to eat, and
Mm-hmm.
protein in there. And then a little bit of starch, but just kind of like that. But if you can set them up and say, hey, here's this grab and go. Here is a smoothie you can have as you're driving to school. Here is a protein muffin that you can have. I do like egg bite muffins and things that, if you're not going to get them sitting down to eat at breakfast, things that they can literally take and go with.
Absolutely. Or have as a snack, even like 9 o'clock in the morning when they're passing in between classes or something, if they're in middle school or high school.
Yeah, and I still do that. I mean, I have a middle school son right now, and he doesn't have specific snack time like my elementary daughter does, but he has snacks in his backpack. So when he's going by his locker, he can grab those out and have something to eat when he needs that. And then really just having a nice options for them when they get home, when we know they're going to come and just eat everything.
The other thing that I know that I've started thinking about, that I wish I knew to think about when I was a teenager. And to my mom's credit, maybe she said it and I was like, yeah, your mom, whatever, what do you know, right? Because teenager.
Yeah.
But like, I'm only now in my mid 40s starting to think about how I feel after I eat what my taste buds wanted to consume.
Yeah.
How does that actually make my body feel?
Right.
So how can we have those conversations? Because clearly, like, body dysmorphia and disordered eating and an array of things can come up in this age. And so we really need to talk about body health and eating positively.
Yeah.
How to encourage that conversation without making it like you shouldn't have eaten that because that was a bunch of crap. Because we tell them they can't eat it, all they're going to do is eat it.
Yeah, no, that is a hard one. I actually have on my website, I have a free download on there and some of it is for mental health ideas to support mental health. But in there comes along with kind of looking at eating patterns and things like this. And this is when I work one-on-one with teens, I do a lot of this, is that we're looking at, it's twofold. Number one, usually starting with that just having them stop. I do a lot of more kind of embodied somatic work of being able to tap into your body because we're so disconnected from our bodies that, and we've lost touch. And, it's amazing how much our bodies can give us. But doing just what you're saying, number one, if we're looking at afterwards, first of all, how do you feel directly after you eat that? Mm-hmm. And then, for parents, even like an hour later, if you're there kind of, seeing, taking a moment to just see how they're doing. And if you see, they're like, or they're bouncing off the walls, just like, hey, how are you feeling right now? How does your stomach feel? Do you have energy? Or are you tired? And I literally have like a little worksheet I'll give out that, it has a happy face and a mad face and a sad face and then like a sick face that I will have the students kind of mark, it's like, how am I feeling? And we also, I learned this from one of the trainings, but an acronym called SHMEC, but we'll just say HECK. So it goes for hunger, energy, and mood. And so you can use this kind of on both ends is like, before you eat, how hungry are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How much energy you have, and what's your mood? Are you hangry? Mm-hmm. Are you depressed? And then looking at that afterwards and kind of bringing it. I'm a child of the 80s. I use a lot of sarcasm. And so I, will do that. It's like, well, how are you feeling right now? Come on, tell me your heck. Let me know how you doing. And using that a little bit and then trying to get that to a point where, hate to say it, but mom brain, mom voice in the brain, how am I feeling? And then the other point I was saying that is on that worksheet is, and I've worked with a lot of kids because we have so much of the disconnection, especially when we're talking about body image and emotional eating, which can be just so hard, is learning to stop and ask, why am I eating this? Mm-hmm. Am I eating because I'm hungry? Am I eating because I know I have a workout that I need to fuel? Right. Am I eating because I'm bored? I'm sad? I'm anxious? All of this, finding reasons behind the hunger. And then sometimes, it is just stopping and saying, okay, what am I feeling right now before I have this? And I have one teen I work with, all she can feel right now is anxiety. And, I don't know if you've ever seen the mood wheel where you can break down the emotions to more specific things, but she has a copy of that now. So I'm like, okay, so anxiety, can we drill it down more? Mm-hmm. And then can we think, what is that anxiety coming from? And sometimes you don't know, but at least you can say, okay, you know what? I'm feeling anxious right now. Do I really want to eat this food? Or would something like, as we talk about mental health and physical activity, a short walk around the block work for me? Or even doing 10 air squats, just doing something else. Is it, okay, instead I'm going to sit down and this isn't movement, but I'm going to go read a book for a minute. But trying to disconnect. My favorite one is simply going outside and just looking out into something and disconnecting and bringing, because outside also helps with that dopamine and the serotonin as well.
Right.
It's changing that, and starting to bring it into, why am I eating this? And then start taking notes. And that's the other thing that we have to remember is we're recognizing first, hey, I'm depressed, and so I'm going to eat this carton of ice cream. Okay. Sometimes you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, you know what? I don't feel good. I'm going to eat that carton of ice cream and I'm going to deal with it. And you continue on. But the fact that you've acknowledged why you've done that, then after you eat that carton of ice cream, you can be like, you know what? That was a really bad decision. I do not feel well and I don't feel any better. So the next time I recognize that I'm depressed and I want to eat the carton of ice cream, what will I do instead? And making that plan.
Right.
And so I think a lot of the times when we're thinking about that, sometimes as parents, we can see things, but we also have to remember that we can't feel our kids' feelings.
Right.
We can't be in their heads.
Right.
And so if you're seeing them and you're kind of like, I don't know if you should be doing that, how can you have, the conversation, hey, what are you, why are you eating that? Are you hungry, or is there something else going on? Opening that up, being ready to be totally shut out or even attacked because you're the safest, closest person. But knowing that, hey, that question got into their brain.
Right.
And then maybe checking in with them after, 30 minutes to an hour afterwards and just saying, okay, well, how you doing? Not even mentioning the food, just tapping into how they're doing.
Feeling. That actually ties into something I know I've shared with you before, my belief on the foundations of connection.
Yeah.
That ties into the observe. I actually talk about the emotion wheel in that as well.
Yeah.
But I also talk about, especially as the adults in the situation, whether we're the parent or the mentor or the aunt or uncle or whatever, keeping kind of a track of what we're observing, because it's easier to be like, hey, Bobby, I've noticed that in the last 2 weeks, whenever you've eaten Cheetos, like a half an hour later, it seems like your stomach is upset. And I just pulled Cheetos out of thin air because it happens to be one of my occasional vices.
I hear that. Mine is Cheez-Its, but I get it.
But if we can be like, look, I saw it on this day, and I saw it on this day, and I saw it on this day, they don't have the mental capacity to monitor that or to track that or even to know to track it.
Right.
Right. But if we can think about that, or even like put a note, in your phone, like and that way you can like search in Google Calendar, like, oh, at this day, at this time, Beth was a stark raving lunatic.
Yeah.
Something like that. Well, and so then that's actually something else that I want to tie in. I know that you talk a lot about, as those of us assigned female at birth who have menstrual cycles. I honestly feel like we get screwed. Like, our hormones are a daily disaster, right?
Yeah.
They're up and down and all around. And sometimes they look like the stars in the Milky Way. And sometimes you feel like you're in a black hole.
Right.
So, like, what the ever loving?
Yeah. Well, when you were talking, you dialed right into where my brain was headed as well. In the fact that, if you have a daughter who is cycling, start tracking her cycles. And you can do this on paper. I know there's some question marks anymore about if we want to use the apps just because of some of the new federal regulations.
Yeah.
But paper calendar is great. Just making a note like, oh, okay, Jen started her period today. We're just going to kind of track and see her cycle, because that is exactly it, is the fact that we've experienced it, as adults going through. Maybe we haven't recognized it because we didn't know better, because people didn't talk about this stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, our emotions as we go through our cycles, it's a roller coaster. We know this. And, the first few days, like days 1 to 5, I think I wrote this down. I did. Okay. I gotta make notes for ourselves. Okay. Those days 1 through 5, our first day through the 5th day, tend to be more irritable. We tend to be more irritable.
So, yeah, let's just actually reverse, because we may have some folks who don't know when to start with day number 1.
Okay. Yeah. So day number 1 is the first day of your period. When the day you start your period is day 1.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely welcome. And thank you for that redirect.
When I was a teen, I wouldn't have known that, because this is my mom and I didn't have. So carry on.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. This is one of the things my mom gave me the period book and was like, have at it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But yeah, this is something I definitely talk with the teen girls about, so that they can feel empowered in that. But yeah, you tend to be more irritable during those first, that first week, 5 days or so of your period. And, you don't want to be bothered. You just want to rest, feel that good. It's like, just leave me alone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then around after, like during the second week, so days 6 through 15 or so, we call this the Venus week. This is right before we start ovulating. And so we feel beautiful and confident. And, we're so outgoing. And we're going to be into trying new things. So this is a great time to be like, oh, she's kind of feeling a little sassy. Maybe I should suggest, hey, did you want to try some celery and peanut butter today? Trying some of those new, hey, how about, did you want to, try my workout with me today? Because, a lot of girls don't like to do traditional workouts, but, these are, you want to walk, you want to try something like that. That's a really good time to get them when they're feeling a little, better, when you kind of, yeah. And then ovulation day, which is different for everybody, but that's usually just the peak power day. And then basically ovulation during the third week, days 16 through 22. They're usually really connected. It's like, oh, mom, I just love you. So that's a really good time to maybe have these conversations about emotions and things that you're feeling, what's going on. They're going to feel naturally more connected and maybe want to share more with you. Don't take this as gospel by any means, but a better
It's something to know.
And then the last week before your period, so we usually say around 22, most traditionally period cycles will last anywhere from like 25 days to maybe 32 days, but that is a huge variety. So we usually say 28, but it can obviously have a lot of variety on the person.
Sure.
But this is a time again where they're going to start drawing inward again. They're kind of getting ready to shed, all of that lining internally. So they're drawing inward. And so they just may not be as communicative with you.
Right.
And these are times too, during these times when we're a little bit more drawn inward, our bodies are probably going to be craving more of those sugary carbs. And so you may see, the wandering, just standing in front of the open cabinet. And so, what kind of carbs can we have? Can we have more whole grain options in there? And that's something, maybe this is a good time also to have a little bit more protein, even though you don't crave it. Those times when you are really happy and everything and they're strong, those are the times, they're actually going to be, doing better with a little bit more protein and actually a little bit more fat of all things. So you can, this is a time where you can, suggest things that are a little bit higher protein, so, and even it doesn't have to be like, here, have a steak for a snack or anything like that. It can be yogurts. It can be, one of my favorite is like the peanut butter protein balls, where you make with peanut butter and, some protein powder and things like that. So you can be a little creative, but just know that right before their period and that first week, they are going to be a little bit more drawn inward. They're probably going to be a little bit maybe reflecting on, woe's me, my life, irritable, things like that, lashing out, wanting those carbs. And so looking at ways that we can support them emotionally and mentally. And sometimes that's just being a silent presence for them. And sorry.
What strikes me is that, again, going along with foundations of connection with the observation.
Yeah.
If we're presuming that it's a mom listening, and clearly we're talking about a daughter,
right?
It makes sense to me that we need to be tracking the daughter's cycle. It makes sense to me that we should be teaching her how to track her cycle and teaching her these things that you just said. Like, if you feel like you're a stark raving lunatic and like, seeing a sad puppy puts you into like convulsive sobs.
Yeah.
There's a hormonal, biological, physiological reason for it. It's okay. You're not losing your mind.
Yes. Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, a lot of the work and especially, some of the programs that I put out as a teacher and some of that and things that are upcoming in my own practice is exactly that. It's like, I call it, empower her, bringing these things of awareness, because if you're so disconnected with your body and, that's what I say, I'm 49, I learned these things in my 40s finally.
Right.
Only because I got an interest in more women's wellness, and that's how I learned them. So my mom didn't know anything and teach this. But, and I can tell you as being a health teacher, they're not teaching it in class either.
Right.
Regardless of your growing and changing or whatever. But yes, teaching your kid, normalizing, taking the ew away from the menstrual cycle. And instead, I like to tell people, if you know your body, tell these girls, this is your superpower. And Absolutely. We could go on how you can use the menstrual cycle in athletics, because it's another thing, but it also ties in outside of athletics and just in living a very empowering, active life to raise an active and a confident girl.
Well, and especially too, if mom didn't know these things and she's learning them for the first time from you today, whenever she happens to be watching this, right? And she's like, oh, wow, okay, I can track my daughter's cycle with her. I can teach her about these things. Oh, but now I can know more about myself.
Right.
And I'm in a space where I'm going inward just because of where I am in my cycle as the mom, then and my daughter and I aren't lined up and she's going into her connective week,
Right.
I'm going to be like, just get the hell away from me, and she's going to be wanting to draw in, and I'm going to feel like a rotten mom because I'm not responding to her. She's going to think I'm a rotten mom, and oh my gosh, the disconnect and the angst, the fights, the anger, the frustration that must come out of that.
I agree. Yeah. And this is where, and I know you and I are similar on this, where the communication comes in.
Yes.
It's amazing. And this is what I've heard from my students and my athletes, how appreciative our teens are when we have direct, honest conversations with them.
Absolutely.
And then also, I hate to say it because I had to do this yesterday, is sometimes we have to put our big girl pants on and be the parents and step outside that comfort zone, even though we want to hide all day, because our daughters need that from us.
Correct.
And but having that conversation saying, sweetheart, I am just feeling really low in my mood, and here's what I need. I need a couple hours just to kind of come to myself and reset. And then would it be okay if we sat and had this conversation at this time? And that way I can be there for you, but you need to understand where I'm at right now. Today this is what I need. And then doing the same vice versa. Sweetheart, I'd really like to have this conversation with you. I can tell that you're kind of in a down mood and you're not really feeling like talking to me. How would it be okay if I touch base here again in an hour or two and we can have at least just the start of a conversation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Where were you 35, 40, however many years ago in my world?
I know. I don't know where I was. That's one of the things that, my kind of mission and goal in working with teens in whatever way that is right now, whether it's one-on-one or group or education programs, however it looks like, is to be able to give this information and support that I wish I'd had when I was a teen. I was the square peg, the one who was curious, but who had the parents who were like, well, I don't know. Why are you asking those questions?
Right.
And so being able to put that out there for those kids and for the parents to be like, I don't know the answer to that question. Can somebody tell me? Because nobody talks about this.
Well, and that's, I know, that's my mission at Parent Tween Connection, right? Is to bring together the professionals.
Exactly.
Your world, I know my world. This person knows their world, and to be able to be like, look, here are the people who know their respective worlds. Here's where you go to find the people to get that information. So thank you for being part of that today.
No, of course. I love this stuff. It's as you can tell, I can talk forever about it.
Totally good.
Yeah.
So I actually want to wrap up this segment of our conversation to our Facebook group, to LinkedIn, and to YouTube. And I like to wrap up our conversations when I remember is to ask our guests which of the foundations of connection either resonates most with them personally now or as how it fits into their world. So if you're not familiar with it, for our listeners, I'm going to run through it. I'm going to give Beth an extra auditory prompt on these.
Thank you. I have mine somewhere.
It's all the letters of connection. They all spell out, or the first letter of each of these spells out connection. So it's create a safe place. There, she's got her rat card. O is observe. Then non-judgment, nod and smile, as in zip it. Explore, challenge your truths or get curious, take your time, innovate, own your own story, and nurture. So Beth, I'm going to toss it back to you. Which of those jumps out to you today?
I was going to say, you get me on this every time because there's so many of them. And I'm like, I can't choose one. But today, around this topic, I would say really, I think it's creating a safe space.
Okay.
Because so often, whether we're talking about cycles or emotions or nutrition or whatever, what the values that our kids have, what they're feeling, experiencing, where they want to go with it, often will differ from our experiences and maybe our vision of that path. And so to be able to create a safe space so that they can kind of say, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I want, is the most important thing. Because if you don't have that space and it's say, you know, you need to be doing this, eat some more veggies, get outside and play, this attack zone, then nothing's going to change at all. And it's just going to continue the cycle.
I love it. Beth, thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
And for folks who are in Parent Tween Village, Beth and I are going to go live there momentarily. We're going to be talking about how to improve female student athletes' performance on and off the field. And if you're not a member of Parent Tween Village, you can check it out. It's right on our website at parenttweenconnection.com. These videos will live there basically forever. So you can always come back, catch Beth's interview down the road whenever you happen to see this. And then, Beth, you actually mentioned that you had a special offer for folks who were watching. I know you have a couple of free downloads.
I do. So I have a couple of different things. The first one is the free downloads. So my site is just bethjonescoaching.com. If you go up to resources, you'll see there's a drop down with a lot of different everything from supporting mental health and burnout to wellness trackers for teens and parents. Okay. So they can do that. And then I just also like to invite people. I do have a free Facebook group that's called Active Confident Girls. If you look up Active Confident Girls, or my business Facebook page is just Beth Jones Coaching.
Yep.
You will see it there. And we're just kind of getting started up, but I encourage people to join us for education, support, fun, wherever it evolves into. So
that's awesome. And I would say this iteration of your support of teens is just getting running, but your support of teens is certainly not just getting running. So.
No, I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm really excited to move into this next space with it. And
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Feel free to pop on over to our Facebook group if you want to have more connections, if you're not seeing us there. And we're going to go over and out. Thanks, Beth, by the way.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Absolutely.